How's it going, folks? Juno here. There's something that often gets repeated, especially when describing historic empires. And I think it plays a huge role in our contemporary lives. And that is the idea of a Pyrrhic victory. Many times when I think about what it is that appeals to people and directs their behaviors, a lot of the conclusion I come to usually revolves around them wanting to have some kind of answers that'll provide them with real solutions in their lives, something they can derive true benefit from. But the problem is many of the answers that are offered, especially the traditional ones, involve a lot of investment, a lot of initial outlay, a lot of effort. And because that's it doesn't seem like the most efficient method, it doesn't seem like the ideal recommendation, people are often swayed out by claims that there are other solutions that are easier. And when I think about those kinds of solutions, and this could be around all elements of your life and what you end up doing, one in particular that stands out is things like weight loss, for example. We know intrinsically that if we consume a lot and expend very little energy, we're highly liable to become unattractive. And I'm sure you can draw analogies in other areas of life as well. But looking specifically at health, lifestyle, and weight loss, there are so many solutions that are offered to people that try to discount the amount of effort required to achieve them while still offering some semblance of the benefit they desire. And of course, notoriously, this is an area of business that is plagued by malpractice, by poor business practices that don't truly ever deliver for the majority of people on what is being sold. However, it does make some people exceptionally rich. And when you begin to analyze a lot more things in your life that seem to offer some kind of immediate benefit for a very small outlay, one of the things that you'll begin to realize is the victories they try and give you, even if they're able to deliver on some of them, are almost always a Pyrrhic kind of victory. An empty victory. I think there's even a term used to be used called cadmian, which has roughly the same translation. And we are not always intrinsically aware that the victories that we're perceiving are actually empty. And that while you can congratulate yourself on that, when we look back to the example of empire, we see that a Pyrrhic victory can still lead to a string of victories and an eventual defeat in the war itself. There are many times in the British Empire that initially we didn't win many victories at all in certain campaigns. But more often than not, even in those campaigns, we'd go on to be genuinely victorious. Because on some level, the battles themselves are not of paramount importance. And you see many people in their political and social lives today try to just win a series of battles. They focus on the battles, they try and get into these engagements or negotiate, manage these engagements, and all they care about is the winning part of the battles. Yet you look at where they are mentally, psychologically, spiritually, even sometimes, financially, and you think to yourself, for all the battles you've won, the war was lost to you. Someone else ended up, whatever you put in, they're the ones who got the most out of it. All that energy you ended up expending for the sensation of victory, that you're winning a battle, it was a deception, because while you believed you were winning, you were actually losing. And I wonder how clear that is to many people. Is it easy to be aware when you're in a Pyrrhic victory? Or is it only an objective appreciation of the situation that can garner you that point of view? As a people, we should try and be less focused on winning the day-to-day battles and start thinking more clearly and carefully about trying to win the war. You might want to be an attractive person who looks fit and healthy, but Slim Fast on its own doesn't get you there. There is a one-shot solution, and that's change your lifestyle. Invest your time in exercise. Choose the nutrition that you take carefully. Find satisfaction outside of just being full. When you invest in your desires, do you ever really become satiated? When I think about fashion, I will often wonder, clothes have been around for a very long time, and the technology in apparel doesn't really advance that much. However, there's always companies coming out with new things and changing what is in fashion. And while I understand from an artistic appreciation, as our values change and the way that we express ourselves, so the way we adorn ourselves will also change. I understand and appreciate that. But on some level, I also suspect there is a large amount of Pyrrhic victory in the conformity of fashion. And that if you want to create something to be worn, perhaps the most beneficial format of that is one of the most traditional solutions. And that in trying to forerun fashion and be at the advancing edge to pick up all of the financial benefit that goes with setting fashions, perhaps all you're doing is playing into the desire for the quick fix, the instant gratification. Maybe because it's trying to evolve on this understood but difficult to master basic and offer something more easily accessible for less cost, that may appeal to people's desire for having what they want now. But in the long run, the people who do end up spending a lot of their money on fast fashion or disposable goods, well, they have their memories and their experiences, and more than ever society promotes those as some kind of tangible currency. But you find those people who invested so heavily in those experiences often walk away with very little change in their perspective. More often than not, to pay for an experience is to have somebody sit there and reaffirm everything you already believed. Because if you paid for an experience and then somebody gave you something uncomfortable to think, or put you into an unfamiliar scenario where you didn't feel comfortable, you might ask for a refund. There's a quote I heard, I think it was a film I watched, where the character said, "Why should we cure people of their ignorance?" Or something to that effect. And I think what I've realized is there is a genuine financial incentive not only not to cure them, but to maintain their ignorance. I can derive more benefit from your labor by keeping you ignorant than I can by fully informing you and having you make up your own mind, because then your mind being made by yourself may run contrary to my desires. So to ensure that my will is done, keeping you ignorant, and not just ignorant, maybe even keeping you mentally ill, could be the most efficient path to that. There's no denying that Alexander wouldn't have conquered the world without an army. And it was because he could manage and maintain an army of the size and discipline that he had that he achieved what he did, and now we know his name. Maybe in that way, we're kept in line. We're kept in formation by only thinking we have a choice, rather than really being given or shown the way to make our own choices. Because it's simply not in anyone's benefit for us to do that. It would be in our benefit, but our benefit isn't considered. And maybe we have to also entertain the possibility that if we had our own choices, we may make the wrong ones. Maybe things would be worse for everyone. It's unlikely, and I don't like it, but I have to entertain that it might be possible. The Pyrrhic victories that we experience in society are offered to us everywhere, at low prices. And that appeals to some very instinctual desires that we have. And sexuality is just one of them. The commodification of sexuality, the way that it's been quarantined and then only distributed in certain formats, has meant that it's been almost fully yoked and harnessed. Not by ourselves, but by other entities. I've often struggled to understand the perspective of women, though I've had a great instinctual drive to do so for a long time. I've always desired women, and sometimes I've even tried to use them as a form of escapism from my own problems, like somehow the solution would be another person. And I think something that I've learned from that is being driven to understand women from that perspective, because I wanted to know my quarry better and how to catch it. I've realized that there are many ways in which women are protected from even understanding themselves. I think the reason we see so many instances now of hypersexualized individuals, which I would count myself as one, is because of the way that sexuality has been quarantined away from the mainstream of society. Sex forms an extremely integral part of what it is to be human. And in that, the natural format is usually the most desirable because it has the greatest output. But because it's been extracted from our humanity and made into something exclusively dark, exclusively surreptitious, clandestine, there is something missing from society. And I think the expression of that is found in these hypersexualized groups like homosexuals and other varieties of perversion. For a large part, I found them to be products of their environment. A struggle for identity, a difficulty to find a niche when there are so many other competitors. Also, some desire for something that's already known to you, like the same sex as yourself, and the difficulty in now trying to apprehend mentally the position of your natural opposite. I won't be surprised as we go forward in this society I think we will have an ongoing problem with hypersexualization. And in fact, some of our methods to try and exclude it further from society may worsen the situation. I think the truth is it has to be accepted as part of our innate humanity, and it has to be processed in a natural way. It is clear to me that in the past, the married family life offered that option. What a man and a woman did once they were married was entirely up to them, and society bore very little judgment against it. But now it's so highly analysed, and because people are so desperate to have some semblance of that natural, organic sexuality, but they're restricted from the knowledge of how to attain it, they find very incomplete and unsatisfying solutions. And once those communities are invested in that solution, they then try and propagate themselves further to reaffirm their position out of a sense of psychological comfort of that. If I'm agreed with, that must mean I'm right. And I will become more comfortable the more people who agree with me. To accept sexuality in the way that it's meant to be, we need to be adults, but we have to embrace the humanity aspect of that. And I believe that when that starts happening, so much of the social controversy that we have surrounding sex, sexuality, gender, all these things, I suspect they will begin to resolve themselves.